Hello, everyone. I'm Menditto, and this is Jay Kurji. We're going to present Crosswork Workflow Manager to you today. I need to use the clicker. Okay. All right, so what we're going to talk about is how Crosswork Workflow Manager helps customers automate their network change management process. We're also going to tell you about some of the new features in Crosswork Workflow Manager 1.1, which just shipped a month and a half ago. This is our second feature release, so we're very excited about it. As you heard, we launched the product a year ago here, and we've done a number of good enhancements to it. We're also going to talk about interoperability with Crosswork Network Controller and NSO, as well as the ability to integrate with other systems. We'll talk about the product update. Jay is actually going to show you the product in action. And then we'll finish off with the CWM resources that are available online. So first I'm going to talk about the value of workflows. Right? So workflows are abstracted from the details of the execution process. So if you have a mop and you have a long list of procedures you have to follow, you can code them into a workflow. You can have those execute. They can be pre-tested. They can be modularized, so you can break them into smaller workflows and combine them with others. And it gives you a great repeatability. Also, the mean time to validation is improved because within your workflows, you can code them so that they're actually checking some of the output coming back, and you can assign policies to be able to determine success or failure without having to have the operations team surf through loads of CLI output or detailed logs. You also have the ability for granular recovery and error handling. So within Crosswork Workflow Manager, we maintain the state of where your workflows are, and you can define various recovery actions depending on where you have to recover from and what you have to backtrack from. So, and those can vary by workflow. They're dependent on what the customer policy is. And then in terms of communications, there's multiple aspects to this. So first, workflows can act as intermediate points for multiple ecosystem applications, meaning that if you have to go access a database at the beginning of the workflow to gather some information, or you have to access IPAM to go get an IP address, or you have to do some other things all in preparation before the workflow actually can do the rest of its job, you can define that within the workflow, and we'll show you some of that. Workflows can also pause for approvals. So within your process, you may have a workflow defined that goes through a certain number of steps, then flags the operations team and says, well, okay, I've reached this milestone. You want me to continue, right? And you can do that. We can message to other systems. You can send back responses. You can continue with the workflow after that. Also, it can notify multiple operations teams in the background by sending messages to multiple messaging systems. So there's two key things I want to point out on this slide. I'm not going to go through all this detail, right? But the point is, you have a workflow that starts with validating the assumptions when it starts. It moves to its preparation phase, moves to execution, then moves towards completion. Each of those steps, when you're starting out with workflows, you may have various steps for approval in those. So you want to go cautiously and slowly and be careful about it. As you get more familiar with the operation of the workflows and more comfortable with the technology, you get to move to a more autonomous type of approach where you start to take some of those approval steps out because, let's say, well, it's never been known to fail or it's not expected to fail. It was a poor assumption to begin with. So you go from being cautious to being more confident about the workflows themselves. In terms of what types of workflows you can build, within CWM, we wrote the product with the ability to adapt to any kind of workflow. So anything that you can do operationally on the network, you can access those CLIs or APIs through the workflow and automate them. So we can be driven from outside OSS systems. They can trigger a workflow to start. We can send information out to OSS systems. We can interact with them. Any number of things. And some of the workflows that we've actually built ourselves. First off, we've built the router automation kit, which you'll see more of in the next session. But essentially, this is it's more than a demo. It's a commercial offer from Cisco, where we are providing workflows that run fleet upgrade, the golden config, and zero-touch provisioning. So some of the people on my team are going to take you through that in the next session. We've also done, we did a firewall provisioning demo for a particular customer, wanted to see something that was not router related, but wanted to provision firewall policies. So we've built that one. We have the demo we did a year ago for interfacing with Amazon Web Services to instantiate a virtual router and then bring it on board and onboard it to CNC and NSO. So the intention of these was to show interaction with multiple systems. And in that one, we used messaging with WebEx. In the firewall demo, we actually created a WebEx bot so that the messages go to a bot that can interact with a number of team members, and they can respond back to the workflow from there. More recently, we've done a demo on L3 VPN bulk provisioning, where we had 500 LPN endpoint updates, and we run through them. They were provided as a JSON list. We drove through those and provisioned them through NSO. In most of these demos, NSO is our preferred choice for the provisioning tool. We also have some customers that are asking for some different things. They're not ready yet. Some of them are under consideration. We have a customer who's asking for integration for TMF 641. This particular customer wants to use our CAFTA support to be able to receive CAFTA messages. We take the payload off of TMF 641. Within the workflow, you would process that payload, execute what's needed for service ordering or whatever, and then respond back that way. There's also bandwidth remediation use cases, event remediation, as well. So if your performance monitoring system raises an event and it's got a known remediation that drives a particular workflow, we can run that remediation automatically and help with processing that event quickly. And last but not least, we're doing some work in studying how we manage groups of devices. Currently, in our fleet upgrade use case, you provide a list of devices and we run through them and do our due diligence with those. There's actually some call for being able to define a group of devices, and instead of providing the list of devices, you point to the group and be able to just say, do this to the whole group. So we're working on that. And again, these will also include integrations with some of our other products like WAY, CNC, NSO, et cetera. This first 4 demos I talked about, this is just a more pictorial view of them. The point of this slide is mainly to point to the fact that 2 of them are available on YouTube, so you can access them anywhere. And the others just work with us and we can arrange to show them to you whenever. So Crosswork Workflow Manager 1.1. As a reminder for people that may have forgotten from last year, this is a Kubernetes-based structure. We ship it as an integrated solution. It is a simple deployment on a single VM. Software downloads as an OVA. Most people have told us they've downloaded and installed in 20 minutes or less. So very simple install to get started. Includes RBAC support. We have management interfaces. You can collect logs and show them through Grafana. For managing your workflows, we have a number of organizational tools for them. So we have the workflow library. So when you've defined a workflow, you store it in the library and ready for the operations team to use for execution whenever they need it. The job manager is for workflows that are running or have run. So you can actually see the status of the workflow, and you can see the results after it's run. We support, for each of those two options, we support tagging, so you can classify your workflows. Let's say you have 100 or more workflows, or your library of workflows is growing. How do you search them, right? So we support tagging, so you can classify them, search and sort on tags, and find your workflows easier that way. And workflows can be calendared or scheduled. I spoke a few minutes ago about modularizing workflows a little bit. We refer to that functionality as child workflows. So you can create a small workflow, does a piece of work that is going to be consistent that you need for multiple workflows. You put that in the library, you reference it from there within a bigger workflow. So you start to build up this collection of pre-tested, reliable workflows that you're then going to use in bigger workflows, and you're not reinventing those components. For integration, Crosswork Workflow Manager, all of our APIs are available over REST, and they're Swagger enabled. Also, within a workflow, you can access other applications, as I've noted before. We have adapters shipped with the product for NSO, REST, CLI, and email. We also have, one of the things we've just introduced was our extended SDK. So we had an SDK before for generic use for building your adapters. We've created the extended XDK, which can ingest Swagger definitions and read NSO services. So it can auto-generate the code from that. For event handling, we support Kafka and AMQP. And for error handling, we have what's called error compensations. And we also have generic error recovery. And then one more thing on management. The workflows themselves, we've built in an interface so you can, within your workflows, you can create log messages. So if you have a complicated workflow that you want to be able to log things as you go, we provide that capability. The items with the stars on them are the ones that were new for the 1.1 release. So you can see we've been quite busy over the past year. I'm going to talk a little bit about event handling. So I'm going to generically call it Kafka, even though you can interpret that to mean either AMQP or HTTP as well. Workflows can send, essentially we can send and receive messages. You can connect to an external Kafka broker. We can have Kafka events come in. They can trigger us to either start a workflow fresh or signal an existing workflow that's registered for that event. Likewise, workflows themselves can send events to the broker and have them consumed by other applications on the bus. We've been using the events in our demos mostly for creating dialogues. So as I mentioned before, we created a dialogue with a WebEx bot. It sends it in the background. It sends a Kafka event that gets consumed by WebEx. It presents it to the user. The user can then respond from that. And one of the nice things about that is you're messaging to a generic system that can be hosted on any device. So that message, even though here we show it on the same screen with the workflow screen, that could be somebody's handheld, right? They can respond straight from their handheld and get the message back. Compensations, or the reversing of a workflow in the event of an error has happened. Within each segment of code within your workflow, you can define some compensation logic. In other words, what should this segment of code do to reverse what it already did? That does not have to be on every block of code. It can be just at key points within your operation where you feel that's needed. In this simple case that we have here, we've got a simple workflow with five blocks in it, the blue boxes, and three of them have compensations, the gray boxes connected to them. In execution, if the workflow executes and gets to a point where it wants to declare that it wants to reverse, in this particular case in box E, it runs through the compensations for each of the boxes that have been executed so far in reverse order. So each one gets to back up its step, and the logic becomes isolated to that particular step. And so in this example, you'll notice that it didn't run the compensation for the block at the bottom, C, if I'm reading it right. Sorry, eyesight's not so good. And because that one didn't execute to begin with. So it's smart enough to know where to go and what to do. I'm going to talk briefly about CWM and NSO, even though I've already mentioned in several cases that we use NSO for provisioning. So workflows, in general, why workflows and why NSO? So workflows implement the change management process. So it's more than just a provisioning step. It's the steps in preparation, the steps for validation, the steps for archiving, right? Those are implemented within workflows. You code them the way you need for your operation. Also, with CWM, the workflows can interface to multiple east-west applications, gather data, push data, whatever is needed. You can define your pre-checks. Your pre-checks can be modular components. Again, using the child workflow capability, you define your child workflows there. You execute them within the larger parent workflow. And it keeps that code modular. The probes checks are the same way. We refer to them as pre-checks and post-checks, but really within the workflow, they're just workflows. NSO is excellent at building service models and excellent at orchestrating service changes. So we like to use that for NSO, or for our workflows. In fact, part of the development team works side by side with the NSO team. So we're very well integrated. Also, NSO provides a multi-vendor abstraction. We rely on that to keep the workflows simpler. And NSO has already has features for error handling, exceptions, so within the domain of what NSO is orchestrating, that provides all that functionality. And then the compensation logic within CWM gives a broader view across the other modules that were run in the workflow. And of course, NSO has the dry run capability that we all know and love. So now I'm going to hand over to Jay, who's going to take you through a little bit about CWM in action. Here you go.
Thank you, Lou. So, I guess it's the first session after lunch, so I'll be doing a demo soon, and it'll be a live demo. Now, for those of you who remember what happened last year, the demo gods were not kind to us, so you'll be pleased to know I've already prayed to the demo gods, so let's see how that goes. In terms of what I'll be demoing, so the main purpose of the demo is to show you how CWM can streamline the processes with NSO. So we're continuing with the theme of CWM with NSO. As part of the demo, we will also show how workflow can be used to do resource allocation external to NSO. So NSO already has resource management capabilities, but there could be reasons and there could be scenarios where you need to do this external to NSO. So as part of this workflow, we are using Netbox. How we can incorporate human interaction. And there's an asterisk there because this is not part of our 1.1 release. This is pretty much work in progress that is scheduled for the next. So this is a sneak preview of the upcoming functionality in terms of the human dialogues and how workflows can be used to interact with the end users. And that could be for error handling or approvals for dry runs. Compensation logic. So if something does go wrong, how does the workflow recover? And it's different to the rollback that NSO does, and NSO's rollback is a lot more advanced. So, in this case, what we do is we call it compensation logic, and as Lou kind of described in the slides earlier, it will go and undo, it will execute this kind of activities or the states that you have defined, and it will execute them in the reverse order automatically based on what's been executed. And then finally, child workflows. So as part of the demo, you will see that we have several workflows that have been created. And then as part of a top-level workflow, they will be executing the child workflows to do the service. Now, I suspect anyone that has been demoed NSO has seen the Layer 3 VPN service. So we are building on the same Layer 3 VPN service. In terms of the architecture, so you got Crosswork Workflow Manager on top, and it has an adapter to Netbox. So in this case, we're right now just using the generic REST adapter. And then southbound, we have an NSO, and we're using the NSO adapter for this integration. And then NSO will then go and talk to the network, which is right now all running locally on my laptop using NetSIM devices. Now, you would have seen this kind of architecture in some of the slides when we do the demo for the Layer 3 VPN service with using just NSO. Some of the other things we've done is we've kind of created some countries and regions and sites, and we've uploaded these sites into Netbox. So when we do the Layer 3 VPN, you will see that all we're providing is, for each endpoint, a name to identify that endpoint, a location, and the bandwidth. And then in the background, we will automatically discover what device it needs to be provisioned on, what is the IP network that we need to assign for that Layer 3 VPN service. In terms of the workflows, so these are the kind of child workflows or the low-level workflows that we have. So there's one workflow that just checks if the device is in sync. And if it's not in sync, it will go back to NSO, get the compare config, and then bring that back to the calling workflow of the user. We have another workflow that does the allocation of the resources, and that will basically say, based on the location that I've given, what is the subnet prefix that I have? I have a /24 in Netbox. I will show you that. Allocates a smaller subnet from that pool, and also gets the device that should be used for the endpoint. And finally, we have the compensation, kind of the undo for the allocate, which is a deallocate resources. So if we have allocated the resources and then somewhere along the line something has gone wrong, the compensation logic kicks in, and it will execute the deallocation. And then this is the main workflow. So at the high level, we will first come in, we will provide input for the endpoints that we want, the name of the VPN, some details required for the workflow to execute. It does the allocation of the resources, and then it does the check sync. And as you can see, these are what we call a for each state. So I have multiple endpoints. So it will basically execute this for each endpoint in parallel, or it can be sequential. You can control that. And then once the check sync comes back, it will see, are there any devices that are out of sync? And if so, we have a device out of sync action, which is where the human dialogue comes in. And you can ask the user now, OK, what do you want to do? This is the diff. And if the user says, yes, I want to go and sync from the network, that's fine. Otherwise, we can abort and it will basically, you can see at the on the last one at the end, we activate the compensation, in which case it will return the allocated resources. Now, if you're happy, everything is going well, we can do the dry run, we have an approval step, and then the final step will be the provisioning of the services. And if any of those steps, when we do the dry run or when we're provisioning the services, there is an error, the error handling kicks in, and it will also just automatically do the compensation of the allocated resources. So I'll plug in now, and we'll start the demo. I'll leave this slide on. Right. Okay, so we're up there. So now we have we have this workflow manager. This is the UI, and again, as you will notice that, say, based on last year, for the newer version that we're running, we're also aligning with the look and feel with the 6.3 NSO that you saw as well. We have several workflows here that you can see: allocate, deallocate, check sync, and dev days demo. This is my netbox installation. And you can see here that I have several subnets that have been just allocated, and there's a site for each of them. And then this is my NSO. And you can see I have no layer 3 VPN. I'm using an older version of NSO right now on my local laptop. So the first thing we will do is we will say, OK, I want to run my dev day demo. I can provide a job name. So let's say VPN 1, and this is the input data that I will be providing. So I have a VPN, demo VPN 1, root distinguisher, and here you can see all I'm providing is name, ID, which is head office, location is Stockholm, bandwidth, and what is the NSO resource. I already created an NSO resource on my workflow manager, so it knows which NSO it needs to connect to. So I'll copy this. And this is some of the features that we've added as part of our 1.1 release, which is you can schedule this, you can provide a cron, you can select a specific date and time if you wanted to, or you can just run the job immediately. So at first, right now, we will run this. And now this has started a job. So now if I do a refresh here, you can see that I've got VPN 1 here. It's already created some child jobs here for check sync, allocating of the resources. And if I go back into Netbox, and we refresh this, you can see here that for the Krakow site, we have a /29 allocated, and for the Stockholm side, we have a /29 allocated. Right now, in NSO, there's still no service, and that's because now we have a task that's waiting here. So you can see here there's a VPN task, and that is basically to say, do you want to approve or reject the dry run? So there was, all the devices were in sync, that was skipped, and now I can go in here, and now you can see, okay, this is the details that was coming in. This is the device that was allocated. This is the subnet that was allocated by the resource allocation workflow, and now we have the dry run that's coming back from NSO. So this will look very familiar for everyone that's used NSO before. And then at this point in time, we can decide what do we want to do. So I can, you have an approver. I can make a signature. I can select approve or reject. So if I click approve, at this point in time, the workflow proceeds. And if we go back to my workflow manager, that's completed. And now you see you got demo VPN here. I have another service that I'll provision here. So this is a second one, which is some kind of a boutique VPN, and we have different sites, London, Manchester, Paris, as an example. So I'll copy this, and we will do the same thing. So we'll run this one again, do this, and we'll say boutique VPN. We can also provide tags. So tagging is another thing that we added into the 1.1 release. So if you had multiple things and you, as an operator, you wanted to provide a unique tag, that will be assigned to the job. And then when you're searching for the jobs, you can just go in and search for that specific tags as well. So you have the option of tagging the workflow if you want it. And then if you're happy, again, you click Run Job. So this now starts the second. And now you can see we got boutique VPN. We're doing check sync. And if I go back to my task list, now you can see I have a new task here. And this one is saying device out of sync. So in the background, I've gone in and updated one of the devices to be out of sync on purpose so that we go into this condition. And if you go here, you can see device, and somebody has updated the host name from test1 to some gibberish. Now, at this point in time, again, we can decide what we want to do. I can open this, and you can see this in a much nicer way. And we can decide what we want to do. So we can either continue, sync the devices, or we can abort. If I go back into Netbox, you can now see that I have Paris, London, Manchester site, and IP addresses that have been allocated for this. So if at this point in time I go back and say abort, we're not going to do this. We might not be sure that this change on the device should be accepted or not. In which case, the workflow should hopefully go back, do the deallocation of the resources. I can go back into Netbox, refresh that. The IP addresses have gone, and then the workflow just completes. So at a very high level, these are some of the features that we have. We have 10 minutes, so over to you, Sam. Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to just briefly summarize where you can get more information on CWM. The product is available on software download at cisco.com and orderable. We have documentation on the regular Cisco software download sites, so you can get to the data sheet, the base landing page. The documentation is all available there. We also, as Nicholas pointed out earlier this morning, we've launched our discussion capability on the community and also access through DevNet. It's all brand new. It's only a week old, so there's not a lot there yet, but we're hoping to get a lot of interaction going there. There are some additional sessions this week on CWM. First, we're going to, right following behind us, there's going to be a session on Router Automation Kit. And as a reminder, that's a set of use cases that runs prepackaged, they're prepackaged downloads from Cisco that run as workflows on CWM. So we're leveraging our own technology there. Also, we have a number of different demos and labs going on this week. I've summarized the main ones here. If you want to ask questions, look for any of us from the team around today or for the next 2 days after this. There are additional people from the team here as well, so we may refer you to some other folks. But in general, we have quite a few people here to help you out and answer any questions you may have. So with that, Marcus?
Yeah, let's have a look if we have any questions on Slido. I think we actually covered the one that came in, which was about, can you show what the workflow looks like when it's running? So I think you did that right.
Yes.
So we got that covered. I have a question. So if I'm a network engineer, I'm going to use Crosswork workflow, and we talk about no code or low code, creation of workflows. So that I think that's one thing, right? I can understand that. But what about integrations to other systems like east-west bound integrations, northbound integrations? Yep. How much coding do I need to know in order to integrate Crosswork workflow with some other API? Do I need to be a software developer? Do I need to work with CX or the BU for roadmap items, or is this something I can manage myself? I don't know. Who wants to take that question?
I can take it.
I can start. So in terms of adapters for integration that would be of high demand, we can interact with our team, and we can see about putting them on the roadmap. But we've also invested a lot of work in the XDK to make that less necessary. In other words, there's a lot of stuff that gets generated automatically through the XDK. I don't know, Jay, if you want to talk more.
So we have two approaches. One is we know that most of our customers have NSO. We have custom Yang models in NSO, and we want to be able to consume them easily. So that's where the NSO XDK comes in. You're able to point that at a Yang file. You're able to say, these are the services I want to consume. It will automatically generate an adapter that you can install in the system. And on the back of that, those adapters will expose a set of activities that you can then plug into your workflow and call with the relevant input and output. If you come to the lab, we have a lab on Thursday, a Getting Started lab, where we will show you how the XDK works. You can see it also auto-generates the documentation, and you can very easily ingest, basically, NSO services as well as actions. On the other one, the other popular one is kind of Open API and Swagger. So we have another XDK that is able to do the same. And in fact, for Netbox, one of the things we've done is, Netbox has a very big, large set of APIs. And we're able to basically point our XDK to that and auto-generate the entire adapter for all of the APIs that Netbox provides with just a single line in the terminal right now. So we are trying to make that easy, but there are also going to be instances where somebody, it's a system that we haven't, it's not maybe supporting standard APIs like REST. For that, we have the SDK. Now, you do need to be a developer for that. It's based on Golang. But we've tried to provide a toolkit which will make it very, very easy. So it does a lot of the plumbing, boilerplate code for you. So all you have to do is basically utilize the existing libraries to write the code. An example is for AWS. We wrote the adapter ourselves, or Christopher, that's there, he wrote it. And I would say he probably did that in a day or two. So there's a very rich library of Go. If you go to go.dev, they have a very big list of tools, libraries, open source packages that you can utilize on there. So all of those are available to you, and then we provide a nice, easy way to package that so you can expose those as activities in the workflow.
All right, thank you for that, Jay and Lou. So let's give them a big round of applause.
Thank you.